I would just add, Allison, the targeted audience here aren't people that are self-professed anti-Semites.
Mhm.
It's not those that say, I hate Jewish people and I don't believe that Israel has a right to exist. Now try to convince me otherwise. That's not our goal here. I think what we've come to find out, and though it's a fictional book, a lot of the events in the book mirror what's happened in reality for members of my family and other people, friends we know, loved ones, anecdotally. And that is that while anti-Semitism, for the most part, is not condoned, you don't see the direct and urgent need to address it head on. Make sure that there's no ambiguities around it. It is not excused. It is something that should be discussed, and there should be severe consequences for it. When you have swastikas painted or written on school walls or lockers, that's not something to just gather a group community and to discuss in a kumbaya kind of way and say, let's sweep it under the rug now and make sure it doesn't happen because it hurts some people's feelings. It needs to be addressed the way other forms of hate, and we all know what that can look like when a community gathers together and does just that. And you see the positive impacts of having those kind of conversations that we don't see nearly enough when it comes to anti-Semitism. That's our main goal here as well, or one of the main goals.
Good morning and welcome to Jew in the City Speaks with your host, Allison Josephs, also known as Jew in the City. We have been sounding the alarm about rising anti-Semitism, since our founding in 2007. For our longtime listeners, you know that Jew in the City started first to push back specifically at the Orthodox depictions of Orthodox Jews. And in the last 4 years, we moved into Hollywood, launching the first and only Hollywood Bureau for authentic and accurate representation, advocating to studios like every other minority group has been doing for decades. And the sad thing is that there are not many people in the media who are stepping up in this moment. There are some post October 7th, but it's not enough. And for a group that is accused of running the media, we could do a better job of running it to help the Jewish people. But there are small wins that are happening, and our guests today are part of the solution. They are some recognizable faces. Bianna Golodryga, who's an anchorwoman at CNN, and Yonit Levi, the host of the Channel 12 Evening News in Israel. They teamed up together to write a book for children about how to deal with anti-Semitism called Don't Feed the Lion. It comes out this week. Bianna and Yonit, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Allison.
Okay, so you're Jews. How did
this part is true.
I think, obviously not all Jews have experienced the post-October 7th world as most of us have. I hope it's most of us. I think it's most of us. How did October 7th affect you? Because I imagine you were both tracking rising anti-Semitism before October 7th, but how did October 7th affect you as Jews and professionally?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say it shook us to our core. I remember exactly where I was when I first heard about the attacks of October 7th. I was with my son in Albany. He had a soccer tournament that weekend, and I was woken to constant buzzing of my phone, my work phone, which that early on a Saturday morning is rare. And so I kind of kept ignoring it. And then once I started seeing the headlines, it became more and more obvious that this was not just, sadly, another tit for tat that we had seen in terms of violence and skirmishes in the Middle East, but that this was something much more serious. And as the hours progressed, I was in this crazy scenario where on the one hand I'm being a soccer mom and on the other hand being a journalist and trying to make sense of what's happening. I immediately thought of Yonit. I not only view her as one of my best friends, but a go-to source for all things Israel related. And I knew immediately that I needed to hear her and an emergency podcast for Unholy. And I thankfully was able to do that on my ride home from Albany the next day. I was also in touch with my colleagues at CNN because we knew that our coverage was going to drastically change, and this was going to be the topic for the next few weeks, months. Sadly, it was 2 years. My show had just launched a few weeks prior. So it changed me as a journalist. It changed me as a mother. It changed me, as a Jewish American. And not all for the worst, obviously. I think we've learned a lot from it. I would have never assumed or described myself as naive, but there were some aspects, I think, to life and even professionally that I didn't expect to come of the tragic events that unfolded that day.
I mean, obviously speaking as the Israeli in the conversation, Allison, our world was, undone really by these events on October 7th. And that heartbreak, which I think in many ways we're still living, was sort of continued into the fact that the world didn't even give us 24 hours and turned around and started to blame us for what happened to us. And Bianna was, for me, very, very soon after. I mean, we were friends before, but sort of that person who the shoulder to cry on, both because of what happened in Israel and, of course, what happened in the Jewish world, the sort of tsunami of anti-Semitism. So that is where we kind of talked every night and sort of tried to figure out what it is that we can do.
And so how did this book come out of that? So I understand that there is a need, and also I guess there's so many needs. There's so many areas where we're so ill prepared. It seems like a game of whack-a-mole. Our enemies seem so organized. I mean, maybe they're having the same ridiculous interfighting and politics that we are, but from this perspective, they seem very well organized in terms of slogans and I don't know, campaigns. So why a children's book as sort of the first way of fighting back?
Well, you set it up, I think, perfectly in the introduction. You started this podcast in 2007, as you said. So clearly there was a need to address anti-Semitism and the rise that we've seen in recent history way before October 7th. I think for us, and for me specifically, the seed was planted about 2022, and that was when we saw a spate of anti-Semitic posts on social media from celebrities, from Kanye West to specifically Kyrie Irving, because he was a very famous basketball star, and especially among younger kids. And for my son, who it's pretty clear is a big sports fan, he was really bothered by the Kyrie Irving controversy, specifically when there seemed to be no consequences for it. Everyone was apologizing for him but him. He was continuing to be able to play. And having been, a Brooklyn Nets fan, we were going to one of his games, and my son asked, should I not be going? Can I go? Does he not want me there? And I didn't know how to answer that question. I reached out to his school and asked, what are you doing about anti-Semitism? What are some of the resources you're providing your students? And they responded by saying, for this age group, we actually don't do anything. We wait for them to ask. And if they ask a question about anti-Semitism, then we'll try to address it. And that really bothered me and made it clear that there's an issue there. And then subsequently, after October 7th, Yonit and I, as we already said, began talking a lot more and realized, now is probably the time we should write that book we can't find, because we accurately predicted that we'd see another spike in anti-Semitism.
And I also remember, this is really Bianna's idea, and we were talking a lot about what we could do. And we, we're both television people. We thought, okay, maybe we should go to campuses, talk to people, do this documentary. And then it was Bianna who said, no, let's go to the impressionable age that's younger. Let's talk to the students and the kids who we can still maybe talk to. And I think that is where this was born. It was quite ambitious to think that two people could write a book for that kind of age group, which I think is a very difficult one. But since we do have kids that age, it made sense that would be the age that another reason that would be the age to talk to.
Are there examples of this for other groups? Are kids taught to not be racist or homophobic or any of the other, sort of things we're not supposed to be? Does that model exist for other people, or did you do this as a way to fill in because all the resource that exists for other groups don't exist for Jews?
Yeah, I think you just nailed it there and put your thumb on the issue. We, when doing our research, realized that for other forms of hate, there were resources, which is wonderful. And so we were just hoping to fill that void for Jewish students and non-Jewish students. And I don't know who we even prioritize more. It's for everyone. And it was very difficult to label this as a kid's book, a middle grade reader's book, a teenage book, because we really want the audience to be everyone from the kids themselves to their parents, their friends, Jewish and non-Jewish, their principals, teachers, coaches, everyone, because I think everyone can learn something from this book. There were not many books tailored for Jewish issues and anti-Semitism specifically, so we were hoping to address that.
Anything to add, Yonit? Nothing from that.
I keep saying I'm adding everything, so I'm like, she gave a perfect answer. What can I
Okay,
say?
no, it's fine. All right, so no,
But
it's
if you just go, like you or your readers or your followers, if they just go and look and search for any other types of hate and how not to hate, and whatever minority group, whatever part of society feels that they're being disenfranchised, you'll likely find a few books on the topic and for this age group, because as Yonit said, they're very impressionable. They ask a ton of questions. They still talk to their parents and the adults in their lives. And they have access to so much going on around them in the world. You can't hide them from daily events and current events.
And they also know in their gut the difference between right and wrong. I think adults sometimes mix that up a little. I think that age group also kind of knows. At least the characters in our book, I think, know the difference between right and wrong. They feel it.
So this is hopefully the pre-TikTok age group that you can maybe get to them, get through to their hearts before they get ruined. Although I guess kids are getting devices younger and younger. What are some of the key takeaways from the book for the parents that are considering, getting for their children that may not read it themselves? What are some of the sort of key takeaways their kids will get to through this fictional story?
I mean, again, I would say that the kids know, and I think in our book, in many cases, know better than the adults in their lives, what to do, and to have the courage to stand up. And I think another important takeaway is allies. It was very important to us. We have 3 narrators, 2 of them, a brother and a sister. Theo and Annie are Jewish, but their very good friend, Gabe, Theo's friend, is not Jewish. And I think the importance of having allies, and as Bianna said, we really would love for Jews and non-Jews to read this book and to see how to stand up to hate. And another thing I would say, it can take time to find your voice. You don't need to have it, the answers, all of them immediately and all at once. But I think that is, that's what I would take away, I hope, from this book.
Is the hope for people to hear about this through the media tour and, just getting it out there? Is there a mechanism to try to get it to schools so that it's actually part of curricula and Jews get at least some of the same treatment? I mean, I think what's so enraging is that for the last 5 years, the world woke up to anti-racism and to inclusion and diversity, and every group counts, except for a group that's actually just too dehumanized to count. So is there any way to get this into schools in a kind of systemic way?
So we have been trying to do just that, and whatever you can do with your platform to help amplify that, we hope you will, Allison. We come to find out that especially school districts are, sort of individually run. So there's not one core centralized, we have Department of Education, but that's not where they can't dictate what independent school districts do and what resources they provide for their students. And so we have learned that the best thing to do is to reach out to each school district directly. And we've been trying to do that, especially the larger ones, where we know there are Jewish communities across the country, large and small, and they're all important. And our goal is to reach every single Jewish reader and non-Jewish reader as possible, and to have these types of discussions in school libraries. We love libraries. We love librarians. We have a wonderful character in the book who is a quirky and very smart and savvy librarian as well, and Miss Westerly. So we have been in touch with libraries, and I think there is interest, and hopefully the more attention this book receives and the immediacy of the issue is more recognized. Hopefully in the months and years to come, we will see more copies of it in libraries across the country, because sadly, as you know, anti-Semitism is not going to go away tomorrow, next year, and the week after, or the year after. And so we'd like it to live in perpetuity. And it's not a panacea to anti-Semitism, but at least it's one more tool for Jews and non-Jews alike to fight back against it with.
I love that you have the children here educating the adults and being the ones to see it, because we actually just put out a viral video about a week and a half ago. We remade the iconic "Always Like a Girl" commercial, where the children are teaching the adults about, what girls actually are. So we did this with Jews. We did Like a Jew, and we show all the expected Hollywood stereotypes, and then the children are reminders of our values and our beliefs and of kindness. And it hit bigger than we expected it would. And I think because there's something very pure about the innocence of children, knowing what's right before they've been really harmed by just poisonous ideas, from older people. Do you have any sort of a toolkit, like a call to action that our readers and listeners and followers could take where it's like, here's the book, here's the conversation? Like, I'm not sure if you have this prepared, but if you don't, I think it would be very helpful to have something prepared where it's like, click on a link and this is the email you write, this is the blurb about the book, and here's how to get them connected to the publisher to make this happen.
Yeah, we have been working with the ADL on that. I mean,
Okay.
we're first time writers. So for us, we by no means we're going to promote ourselves as experts on how to handle anti-Semitism in terms of how teachers teach it in the classroom. This was just a tool that we wanted to make sure wasn't didactic for students and readers. And was something that they could turn to as first and foremost, a really interesting book and compelling story, but also one that just so happened to involve a really important subject matter that we don't think gets enough attention. And I go back to the conversation that I had with the head of, my kid's school, who, means very well and has done a lot of work on the issues that you discussed earlier, other social justice movements and reforms and resources for other forms of hate. And so when, she said, we don't really have anything, it was clear that kindergartners have a ton of books on Jewish holidays and Hanukkah. You've got high schoolers that really go further into the Holocaust and some of the darker, more difficult conversations in history. And there's nothing for this age group on this, epidemic that's once again reared its ugly head. And this is something the ADL has been very willing to work with us on and eager to, actually. So we have been in touch with them, and hopefully they'll be able to provide some resources too.
What would be the dream takeaway for the reader that you hope to read this? I think we all have I have my dreams in Hollywood. So it used to be when I was a kid to be a star, but now it's for, authentic and proud representation of Jews like everybody else. But for your Jewish and non-Jewish readers alike, how will it change them? How will they go about, their interacting in the world after reading this book?
I think it was important for us to say, people aren't born anti-Semites, and that, first of all, there are ways to redeem yourself if you take the wrong path. And actually, there are ways for contrition. There are ways to understand. We try to, as Bianna said, not to be didactic, not to say, this is wrong, you should look at, but actually say, this is our, the Jewish family that we love dearly, and this is the Shabbat dinner, and these are the things they do, and this is how they think, and this is what they go through. They're 13 and they're 11, and they have problems that kids have that age beyond, anti-Semitism. So I think what we kind of wanted to for people to take away from this is that this is a resilient, we are, all three of us, right? We're a resilient community. We can stand up to hate. We have that courage in us, whatever age we are in. And again, we have allies who can help us. I hope that's the dream takeaway.
And I would just add, Allison, the targeted audience here aren't people that are self-professed anti-Semites. It's not those that say, I hate Jewish people and I don't believe that Israel has a right to exist. Now try to convince me otherwise. That's not our goal here. I think what we've come to find out, and though it's a fictional book, a lot of the events in the book mirror what's happened in reality for members of my family and other people, friends we know, loved ones, anecdotally. And that is that while anti-Semitism, for the most part, is not condoned, you don't see the direct and urgent need to address it head on, make sure that there's no ambiguities around it. It is not excused. It is something that should be discussed, and there should be severe consequences for it. When you have swastikas painted or written on, school walls or lockers, that's not something to just gather a group community and to discuss in a kumbaya kind of way and say, let's sweep it under the rug now and make sure it doesn't happen because it hurts some people's feelings. It needs to be addressed the way other forms of hate, and we all know what that can look like when a community gathers together and does just that. And you see the positive impacts of having those kind of conversations that we don't see nearly enough when it comes to anti-Semitism. That's our main goal here as well, or one of the main goals.
May want to get the children's book to Ivy League school presidents, as a way of educating. Bianna, do you think that I know you have a Soviet Jewry background. Like I don't know if you were born there or your family. Sense that people that lived in this country for too long, in the US for too long, kind of forgot that anti-Semitism was a thing. We have one pogrom survivor in my family, and my mother sat us down when we were 5 years old, and she said, things are good today, but things were good in Germany, and things were good in Spain, and every country eventually tires of its Jews, and one day we may need to run. So I had that in my back pocket. We were pretty secular, but it was sort of like part of my identity. And I find that people that were in America longer and missed that wave of anti-Semitism kind of forgot about it. So do you think that your background as a Soviet Union Jew made you more awake and more alert? I know Yonit, you as an Israeli, never went to sleep, but did you have a different level of alertness?
Yeah, I have to say, you're right. I was born in the former Soviet Union in Moldova, and my parents and I moved to the United States, the best decision they've ever made in 1980 as Soviet political refugees. And I have to say, even today, my parents are the most patriotic Americans you will meet, because they understand what a gift it is, the choice that they made to give everything up and leave their family behind, coming with no money, no language, and an infant to a new country. This is by no means a perfect country. No country is. But America is an exceptional country. We have bumps in the road along the way, and good days and bad days. But as Americans, our job is to fight for more good days. And as Jews in this society, it's minor things. Most Americans don't realize that in the Soviet Union, anti-Semitism was institutionalized. So every citizen that was Jewish, they weren't Soviet Jews. They were Jews. That was their nationality. So from a library card to a driver's license, everything about you, birth certificate. My birth certificate says that I'm Jewish. And that stands out. That immediately says that this person's not like the others. And there were, as you know, quota systems in Soviet schools and the top universities. It was very difficult for Jews to be accepted into top universities, to get top jobs, etc. You come to America, and clearly we have an anti-Semitism problem as well. But I think there are many more resources here and much more sympathy in fighting back against anti-Semitism. I identify myself as an American and a Jewish woman, a Jewish American. I love Israel. We left the Soviet Union on Israeli visas, but there's no other country I'd rather be here or be in fighting against anti-Semitism than here in the United States. And it's a long way of saying, our bags are not packed.
My next question was do you feel hopeful? It sounds like you feel hopeful, because I heard you speak last night at the Yad Vashem event. You were excellent. And one of the speakers said, people wonder, how did the Jews in the 1930s not know to get out? And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, because it's hard to know when it's time to get out. I have to tell you, with this Mamdani win, and I have sisters in Israel, my parents are there, and two of my daughters went there. So we have started packing our bags. And I do think we need to be out of here in the next few years. I want to save this country. I'll fight as long as I can, but I guess I feel like I need to plan for it not working out. So are you hopeful? Where's your level for both of you, hope-wise, in terms of, kind of this time around, 75 years later? Do we have a better shot this time? Are you optimistic?
I have my answer. As usual, I'm going to copy Bianna's.
The only thing I would add, and listen, I don't want to be Pollyannish here. There are a lot of problems in this country, and there are concerns that I have that keep me awake at night that I never thought I would have as an American, as a Jewish American, as somebody who's raising my kids in New York. So don't get me wrong. There are a lot of legitimate concerns. I do think that it's not just cliche to say the majority of Jews at least feel that they are safer as Americans or whatever country they are in because of the state of Israel. This has nothing to do with politics. This just has to do with people who believe that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. Sadly, Zionism, has sort of become weaponized in a controversial term. But it's something that, again, we have the luxury of being able to write this book and to speak freely as journalists in democratic countries. And while it may be uncomfortable at times, given the subject matter, may be lonely at times, we should not negate how privileged we are to have the power that we do. And if it changes one person's mind or view, that's a win. We have to take it as a small win.
I think one of the things that deeply connect us, is that our parents are both from Eastern Europe. So when Bianna was talking, I was thinking of my dad, who grew up, a Jewish boy who grew up in Poland after the war. And we should just mention, you didn't need any reason to be an anti-Semite even after the war. Even after there weren't any Jews almost in Poland, there was still anti-Semitism. And he experienced it. He came to Israel in 1957, where he met my mother. I mean, we shouldn't forget that times, even these difficult times, are better than history. And we shouldn't forget, again, we have the miracle that is the state of Israel. And I think that there are reasons to be optimistic. We are two good friends who, came together when 5,600 miles between us, and wrote this story together. We are two halves of the same, people, the diaspora and Israel. And I think that in some ways, this huge crisis of October 7th drove us closer together. That is a good thing. And I am more optimistic than I was even a year or two ago, if you'd asked me.
Okay, and this is the post Mamdani win. Okay, I'll take some optimism. My husband, our date nights literally have been October 7th, and we're like, oh, we changed it up for the Holocaust last night. So, no, I do. First of all, I appreciate that you saw the problem and stepped up. To quote Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, in a place where there was no man, strive to be one. So you saw the opening and you filled it, and that's very much how I operate. And so I really appreciate anybody that doesn't just plan it or talk about it, but does the thing, because that's actually how the difference is made. So kol hakavod to both of you for doing the thing. To our readers, don't feed the lion. It's out this week. It's a great tool for your kids, for your neighbors' kids, not for your anti-Semitic neighbors' kids, but the ones in between.
Unless they like lions.
Exactly. And check in on how to get it to your school. I guess we'll post updates if we have some action items about what to do. But in the meantime, spread the word. It is for the generation that has not yet been infected by social media. And so I will end on a note of hope. And thank you so much for your time, and I wish you much success in this book tour.
We're very grateful, Allison. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And thanks for listening. You can catch us same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.